Lights, camera, action.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another review. Today we're going to be talking about They Will Kill You. So this is a movie that I saw part of the trailer for. I didn't want to watch the whole thing. And the little bit I did see, it gave heavily Ready or Not vibes, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that got that vibe. That's pretty much like the common thread I've seen really talking about this movie so far. And after seeing the movie, I can really say that it kind of has its own flavor to it. Yes, it has those elements of Ready or Not and some ideas that Ready or Not had, but it also has like this Evil Dead 2 vibe mixed with Ready or Not, also mixed with Kill Bill. But literally, like, I was watching this movie and I was like, dude, this is like if Sam Raimi was to make this movie. And I can easily say that this movie was so much fun. So essentially, this movie follows Zazie Beetz, who is like this ex-convict who is searching for her sister, and she takes this job at this shady but fancy ritzy hotel, and come to find out, all the people at this hotel are Satanists and they're trying to hunt her for a human sacrifice, but she's not putting up with any of that. So starting right off with some of the stuff I liked about this movie, I think first of all is I really enjoy the setting. I think this like high-rise hotel looking thing is pretty cool, and the way that how they establish their security and how they establish the entire hotel and like what goes on here, and they do a great job with showing how locked down everything is. So, like, when shit starts to hit the fan, you're like, damn, is there really a way out of this? And I also love the fact that the more the movie goes along, the more that more stuff is introduced throughout the hotel. So that becomes more of a challenge. Like, there's an example where they explain that each floor is something different. And with that, it kind of brings this more thing of more crazy stuff happening, or more violence, and really more comedy to it, because you don't know how all this stuff is going to play into it, but it does a really good job with that. I also think that this movie has such a different flavor from Ready or Not. Like I said, it has those same beats and whatnot to it, but it's also instilled with so much comedy. There is so much comedy and stuff that is with all these characters, like our main characters, our side characters who play these Satanists or whatever, and like they just do a great job with the comedy, to the point to where not only is it physical, there's a lot of physical comedy gags, but there's a lot of like just over the top like violence and whatnot, that they really lean into that and play into it, to where it really just, for me, all of the jokes and all the humor they were going for really they just hit me, and they really worked for me. And it does its own stuff to where it kind of stands out differently from Ready or Not, to where it has these, I mean, it's a similar story, but the way that they go about doing it, and honestly, the whole vibe of the movie, once you see it, it just feels completely different from Ready or Not. At least it did to me. Like, I didn't feel like I was even close to watching the same movie. Like I said, yes, there's those similarities, but pretty much the whole time, I never really thought about Ready or Not. I was really drawn into what this movie was going on. So they did a really good job with making them stand out differently with some of the things they did. Like, they'll use like these crash zooms and whatnot here and there, and these, like, the way that they've gone about editing and using the camera to their advantage, and really like those crazy bombastic style like camera movements that really fit the tone of the movie, with how much like just batshit stuff is happening in this movie. So I think the camera work alone and all the stuff they do really adds something else. But like I said, it almost just is a character of itself, because it puts you in the shoes of like what our main character is going through, and it really just adds something to that flavor of that movie that really just puts you there. Not only that, but like even the kills, the way that they go about executing the kills, no pun intended, they are so over the top that this is a movie that you have to easily, go into this movie being like, look, this is all for fun. Nothing in this movie could actually ever happen. I mean, especially like some of the violent stuff that goes on, but you're just there for the fun of it. And the kills and the gore is so over the top, and like so just fun, and just you just can't help but to have a good time with it. And not only that, they are absolutely brutal. If you love that carnage candy and blood and gore and just seeing people get eviscerated in the most brutal ways, this movie is for you, because there's a lot of that in there. But like I said, even though it's so gory and so brutal in its tone with the way that they go about taking people out, it's done also in a very comedic way, to where if you're kind of turned off by that kind of stuff, that I think maybe the comedic element might really save it for you to where you can go into it and just see it for the funny side or see it for that humorous side that it brings to it to where you're not just completely sitting there grossed out through the entire movie. It's the same way I got to give kudos to the actors. I think all the acting is really well done. I really enjoy Zazie Beetz and everything that I've seen her in. I don't think she really gets enough credit for the work that she does because everything I see her in, like I said, she's really good. And in this movie, I don't know how much of her own stunts that she did, but damn, like I would like to see what the choreography was for this movie overall, because they do these great shots to where, you know, in that Kill Bill style to where, or, you know, any traditional martial arts style movie where it's our one person against 4 or 5 people. And the choreography is just so well done, and the fights are so good because you're right there with them. You got these, you know, wide shots, and all that stuff is just really well done. And she is really put through the ringer in this movie. And like I said, everything that she gives is great. Like, I buy into her badass attitude. I immediately buy in that, yes, she is there and she's going to take out and kill every single one of these people that is in this hotel. And it's just something you buy into her performance. But then you buy into, like, the sides where she's really looking for her sister, and she really has to have that, you know, that motherly instinct to her because she's trying to take care of her sister and watch out for her sister, which is something that is introduced kind of near the beginning of the movie with its storytelling. It goes back and forth with its storytelling a little bit, which I'll get into in a minute. And it's the same way with our actors who play the Satanists. I mean, they really are put through the ringer too. I'm trying not to give too much away with some of the story beats that happens with their characters because it's something that I didn't know about and it was a surprise to me. So that's something that I don't want to give away in my review. But they're really put through the ringer, and like I said, you have some really heavy hitters here. You've got, like, Patricia Arquette, who plays, like, this overseer of this hotel. She's pretty much the one in charge. And you have Heather Graham, who it's good to see her coming back. She's almost kind of had this resurgence a bit. Like, I haven't seen her as much, but it is good to see her coming back a little bit. She could have been in a lot of stuff that I've missed and just, you know, didn't know she was in it. But I've seen her more lately than I have in a long time, so it's good to see her come back. And you have, like, Tom Felton, who's, you know, from the Harry Potter movies and stuff like that. So it's cool to see him step out and do a movie like this as well. While we don't get to know them, like, a lot, which I'll get into again later, but it's one of those things that with what they're given, I think they're really good, and I really like what they brought to the table overall for this movie. And even though this movie has more of a comedic element to it, there are a few scenes that are actually genuinely creepy in this movie. Like, I don't think they really last all that long, and I think this is a movie that's definitely really going for more of the comedic element than it is the horror element, which is fine because that totally works for a movie like this. But there is a few scenes, like one kind of near the beginning where she kind of steps out in the hallway for a minute, and it's a great shot of the entire hallway of the hotel, and you can see somebody, like, kind of standing way off in the back. And then, you know, there's little shots like that. There's another shot that is later on where she gets up into another floor of the hotel where this room is completely shrouded in darkness, and you can see stuff in the little bit of light you have run by, and you don't know how many people are actually in there. You don't know really what they are, for that matter. And they do a great job of keeping stuff like that in the shadows for a lot of the times, especially that scene. So it does a really great job with all that. And like I said, it's definitely more comedic, but it is nice to have a little bit of that horror flavor in here, even though that's really not what it's totally going for. And like I said, I mentioned about the fighting style and the choreography that I mentioned earlier. It's something that I would like to see how much time and how much, like, really went into this, because every fight scene is so well choreographed with everything that it's given. And like I said, the scene I was just talking about with the darkened room and whatnot, that scene in particular, she ends up doing something that is really cool that ends up slowly lighting the room up as she goes. And it's just really awesome how it starts out slower and it just keeps building and building and building. Really great scene. And as I mentioned earlier with the whole hotel setting, I like this idea of a very confined setting. Now, I know for a fact that a hotel can be massive or smaller, and sometimes more confined means you're in one place. And while you are in one location in this hotel, I do like that she has to try to figure her way out while, you know, obviously dealing with all of this crazy stuff going on around her. And like I said, that almost adds this claustrophobic bottleneck element to the movie, even though the hotel is friggin' massive. But I think it adds something to that and gives it more of that claustrophobic feel of, will our character escape, on top of, you know, trying to deal with this just batshit stuff that's going on around her. And of course, I got to give it up for practical effects. I mean, obviously, I know that there's obviously some CGI in this movie, but I think they do a blend well enough to where it's, it's obviously you can tell some of the stuff that's CGI, but they do a great enough blend. And I wish more movies, and I preach this all the time, would either use a great blend like this movie did, or just stick to practical effects when you can. This movie does a great job with its practical effects. It's that old school, thing where it's like, we don't have a lot of money, but this is what we're going to do with it. This is our budget, and we're going to really take something and be creative with what we've got. And I love old school filmmaking like that, because it just, when you're given like a certain amount of money or a budget for a movie and it's lower, look at the amount of movies in the past that have made great practical effects with what they've given. And I really wish more movies now would do that, especially horror movies. And yeah, while obviously some of it might seem a little hokey and whatnot, I think that just adds to the movie. I think they know, like I said, the type of movie that they're making, and they just lean into that and really have fun with it and really embrace it. And like I said, I just think all that just adds so much more to the movie. Now, the only really nitpicks or negatives that I would really have with this movie is that you don't really get to know much about the Satanists, for example. Like I said, you've got two really big heavy hitters with Heavy Graham and Patricia Arquette, and with them, you don't really know nothing about them. You just know that they're at this hotel, and they've been there for a very long time, and you learn a little bit about the ritual that they have to perform and whatnot. But other than that, you don't really know anything that makes them, give them kind of a character thing where you learn a little bit about them. I mean, you learn something about most of them, and it's something, like I said, that I don't want to give away, because I don't know if it was said in the marketing or not, but I just don't want to give it away. So you do learn a little bit about them that give them like something that makes them stand out a little bit. That's kind of a cool element to bring, and it kind of creates this new challenge for our main character, who is having to go through all this. So that kind of also, not only does it bring a challenge, but it also brings more comedic elements to the movie. I just wish maybe there was a little bit more about them. I mean, this movie's only like an hour and a half, so it really gets in there and gets out. So I can understand, why them, not want to take too long trying to set these characters up. It was just, it had the story that it wanted to tell, and it did a great job with that. I just wish we got a little bit more meat on the bones of our villains, but I get it. Other than that, though, all I can say is I had an absolute friggin' blast with this movie. I think it's just a thrill ride from start to finish, and once it actually starts with the violence, oh man, it just doesn't let up. It just keeps going and going and going all the way to the end of the movie, and it gets wild. Like I said, this is a movie that you kind of really have to suspend your disbelief for and really walk into it knowing that, yeah, this movie's going to be so over the top that I'm going to have to temper my expectations and have fun with it, turn my brain off, and just, enjoy it. I mean, even the final battle that happens in this movie almost feels like a video game boss, which I think is really cool, because like I said, that just really leans into it and really just adds that fun element to this movie. So by all means, like I said, I definitely recommend going to check this one out. It's so much fun. It's a great date movie. Like I said, I know there's a lot of blood and gore and guts and all that stuff in it. And if that's not your thing, like I said, the whole thing with the comedic element of it might really, take that edge off for you, and you can actually have a laugh out of it instead of being so grossed out to where you'll be able to, like, I can't really watch this. So, I mean, I highly recommend checking it out. It's totally worth your money, and it's just a really, really fun time at the theater, and yeah, I can't recommend it enough. Thank you, everybody. That is my review for They Will Kill You. If this is the review that you're finding me on, please come over and check out all my other reviews so far. I have a pretty good list for 2026. I'll leave a card for those somewhere up here, and I have a whole back catalog for 2025. So I'd love to have you come check out some of those videos, and let's talk about some movies that we saw either this year or last year. And if you have seen They Will Kill You, please comment below and let me know what you thought about it, all your likes and dislikes, what really worked for you, if you really enjoyed it, or if there were just too many similarities to other movies that you were kind of like, it just wasn't for me, which I totally understand. But as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. That way I can see all of you in the next one. Thank you so very, very much.